This is your economic review. My name is Simba Elijah Charles. Can I get the biggest headlines that you're waking up to this morning that touch on the weight of the money in your pocket? Now, the government's decision to slash the 12.8 billion shillings earlier allocated to the tourism ministry has been met with the mixed reactions from players in the industry. Now, the Ministry of Tourism has been left with only 9.4 billion shillings, even as the sector has been the most affected during the COVID-19 pandemic. This came to light after the Treasury released its supplementary budget estimates last week. All right, now to help us go through what the reduced budget for the tourism and hospitality sector would really mean for that sector that has been heavily impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. This morning, we are joined by the chairman, Kenya Tourism Federation, Mohammed Harsi. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good to be here.
Happy to have you around. Let's first start painting the picture of what the reduced budget allocation would mean for the marketing of the tourism sector in the country, and what sort of marketing we need now for the sector.
You know, tourism firstly involves people who want to go on a holiday, and it's all about emotions, and it's all about convincing somebody to visit a destination. And where we are currently, which is actually globally, we are all dealing with the mess by COVID-19, which revolves around safety and hygiene. For the first time, basic hygiene has become a big issue. But now that the world is rolling out the vaccine, we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. Keep in mind that all other destinations will also be fighting for that client out there. Number one, our source market, which is basically the North American market, which is the US, Canada, and continental Europe, and also Africa, you'll realize that they are also hurting. Some of them have had to close their businesses. Some have lost their jobs, and others have even lost their loved ones. So people are all in different, stages, of dealing with COVID. Now, every destination that is coming back, you need to spend money to tell them what you're doing and why they need to choose your destination. You are in media, and we all know advertising, hosting familiarization trips, bringing agents here, all costs money. Airlines that will have partnered with us in the past by giving virtually almost free ticket are no longer able to do that because they don't even have enough numbers to fly to sustain the business in the first place. So for us to turn around and start cutting budgets, which was meager even in the first place, is not good news in our recovery program. Thank you.
Mr. Harsi, is somebody going to ask you that is it just a cry by running away from what everybody now is cognizant of in the economy? The number one, we did not perform well, our collections have dwindled. So whether we like it or not, either way, one way or another, that this was expected.
There's a lot of interruption today. I can hardly hear. Maybe you can repeat the question again.
Let me just repeat the question. Can you get me now, sir?
It's a bit better, yes.
Yes. Is somebody going to ask you, well, why are we crying about a budget cut when in reality the economy has not been well not performing to enable us well to sustain the budget?
Okay, firstly, when you look at the tourism contribution,
yes,
we are normally either number 2 or number 3, and sometimes back at one point we were number 1. So these days, when you look at the tourism contribution to the exchequer or to the country's economy or the GDP, we have the diaspora remittance, then we have horticulture, then we have tea, and then we have tourism. Now, when you look at how much we contribute, close to 160 billion, when it comes now to feeding the goose that lays the golden egg, suddenly there's nothing for that industry, which is not a good thing. Because if we have to keep tourism going, we need to plow back. And plowing back means rule of thumb is many countries will actually consider 10% of what they've earned. So if you're talking of 160 billion, we're looking at 16 billion shillings.
Yes.
We are not anywhere near there at all.
Yes.
So when you give something like 300 million shillings, yeah, that is just scratching the surface, because that is what places like South Africa will utilize in less than a quarter. And yet here we are expecting Kenya Tourism Board to deliver and compete to the likes of Morocco, the likes of Mauritius, and all these countries that are heavily funded. It is very simple. Feed the goose that lays the golden egg, and we will deliver more. $1 invested in tourism marketing will give you $10. And these are figures that are all available by the UNWTO.
Yes. All right.
So we are not asking for free. We are not asking for free money. And when we say marketing, it is not money that is coming to us as individual companies. We are always saying, help us to propel the country so that people can know what we are offering. Keep in mind, everybody else is doing this. Let me just give you a simple example. Dubai are in the final stages. Yeah, they're giving you a long stay where you are able also to get your vaccine 21 days and above, which is subsidized by the state, so that they can kickstart their tourism. You go to Mauritius, not only are they telling you come and stay, they're even offering you citizenship. Places like Maldives have cut down their prices by 70%, and in the process, government is underwriting, giving a subsidy, in that, so that you kickstart and you are able to remain in the lips and in the eyes of the market out there. So it is that vicious. I'm not suggesting that we go out there and start dropping prices. That's not what you're going to do.
Yes.
But marketing, whether it is digital, whether it is above the line or below the line, it costs money. It is not cheap. Even in the first place, tourism board was not getting enough. Fair enough, they managed to spread that dollar, but for us to come back and even cut it further, just because you're cutting everything else, I don't think it's very wise on our part as a country.
Yes. Let me bring in George Manga this morning, who's the managing partner, AMG Kenya. George, wow, I mean, these cuts that we've seen now, they're not just for the tourism sector in the country, they've been across the board. Is this what we were expecting, whether we liked it or not, that each one of them was going to get a cut, owing to the way the economy has performed in 2020? Yes, George, could you unmute your mic, sir?
Sorry, I hope you're getting me now.
Yes, we can.
I was saying thank you for hosting us this morning. First things first, Elijah. Government is experiencing fiscal spending controls that has been brought about by reduced revenue collection in the year 2020. You remember we had economic stimulus programs in 2020 that included tax cuts. You remember that was the ESP1 and ESP2. And that had a roll-on effect now on the revenue collections by government. So come 2021, government has found itself in a catch-22, where it needs to spend so that it resuscitates the economy, but again, that money to spend is not there. But where I differ with government policymakers is, as my colleague has said, that sometimes you need to feed the goose that lays the golden eggs. When you start having budget cuts on the very critical sectors like tourism, then what you are essentially saying is that you are not interested, or your policymakers are not interested in seeing this industry come back into life and start bringing in revenues to the government. So I would have loved to see budget cuts in other government spendings, but not on tourism, not on agriculture, and of course not on manufacturing, because that is what propels the economy. So that at the end of 2021, we can say that this sector has brought this much to the exchequer, and we can use that to plan now for 2022. But when you start doing budget cuts in the very critical sectors of the economy, then probably you are shooting yourself in the foot, as it were. You remember yesterday, I think the day before yesterday, IMF has ratified a credit line for the government. I expected that those funds are supposed to go to the critical sectors of the economy, of which tourism is one of them. So we are yet to see a response from the policymakers on how they expect to utilize the IMF credit line and the other collections that the government has done. You looked at KRA's advertisement, I think, press the other day, that there's a past their January tax collections by around 2%. Where are they planning to invest that money? So that as we go in 2021, we can see a rebound of the key economic sectors in this economy. Tourism is not only a critical economic sector for Kenya, but it's also one of the biggest FX earners for our country. Remember, Kenya shilling has not been performing very well, and one of the reasons is that FX inflows has been dwindling. How do we cure that? By ensuring that our FX inflows start going up, and one of the sectors that contributes to our FX inflows is the tourism sector. So I expect a policy shift on the tourism sector, as opposed to what we have seen with the latest advertisement or with the latest presence from government on that line. Elijah.
Yes, Collins, good morning. Let me bring you in before we go back to Hersey on exactly then what the outlook for the tourism and hospitality sector could be in light of the COVID-19 vaccines that we do expect to even start coming into the country. Collins, do you share the same sentiment that, wow, even despite the depressed economic performance, despite the dismal performance we actually even saw from the same sector, that indeed, well, even as you cut budget across the board, you should give it what it deserves? Do you share the same sentiment, Collins?
Thank you so much, Simba, for that, for having us this morning. What I would say is that government is not interested in revenue collection. And if it is, then it has gotten it lost insofar as its revenue streams are concerned.
Yes.
For an industry that was badly hit, like the tourism sector, and you for the first time in the history of this country, we have had a lot of hotels closing down because of the pandemic. The lockdown compounded the situation even further. I mean, you would see efforts, you'd expect to see efforts from the government to really resuscitate this resuscitate this sector that has really been hit by the pandemic. But you're not seeing that insofar as its allocations are concerned. And just to piggyback on what George has said, government is getting a lot of monies a lot of debts to cushion it insofar as its budget is concerned in this year, 2021, 2022. But you're not seeing that applicable, that being applied in sectors that are important or sectors that matter. You've even talked about vaccine. I don't want to get into that because that is totally another different thing that we'll have to talk about how this government is handling that situation. But really, for me, I don't think government is concerned with regards to resuscitating the tourism sector insofar as the cuts are concerned.
Yes.
Or I'm yet to see cogent proposals from the government in how we are going to revive this sector that has been badly hit.
All right, let's get back to Hersey this morning, therefore, and talk about what Q4 numbers have been and the entire optimism that has been expressed in the sector. That as from Q4 onwards was supposed to see sort of a rebound in terms of the fortunes of the sector. Can you confirm that Q4 numbers could be better? And what sort of sentiment are we expressing in the tourism sector with the announcement that yes, vaccines are bound to come into the country sooner rather than later, sir? Yes, Mr. Hersey, can you kindly unmute your mic?
Yeah, the recovery is not something we are not there yet. We
Yes.
are all talking about, it's all about survival at the moment. And 2021, there'll be no recovery if we were expecting that. And this is global. In fact, some of the leading destinations are looking at the third and fourth quarter of 2022. Even some of the well financed destinations that are popular and well developed, they're looking at 2022. In our case, we have various factors at play. Number one, the vaccine will take some time before it gets here.
Yes.
Then number two, we're already in the silly season of politics, which means we now lose focus on the main things, and now we are all focused on politics, where temperatures go up, and anytime there is election, unfortunately, in this country, everybody and everything slows down.
Yes.
And while we have behaved ourselves in 2017 and 2019, we haven't had serious problems. Tourism can still do well even under those circumstances. However, if there is any slight hint of violence, then tourism will simply go down again. Remember, we are coming from a COVID situation, and how I wish that we didn't have an election in 2022. I'm not suggesting we should not have one, but I wish we have already had it, and we have had probably 3 years to go before we get into an election. But that's the way things are, and we just have to live with it. So, are we optimistic? Obviously, yes. Are we unhappy about the cut? Yes. But are we going to continue complaining and whining about it? No. As I said, the funds that are given are not given to individual companies.
Yes.
By the way, and I need to educate our viewers and everyone, when we go on trade fairs and we go, let's say, to London, we go to Berlin, we go to a roadshow in the US or Australia, every company will pay its own ticket. Every one of us will foot the accommodation bills. Even the stand where you have a small desk placed for you, you pay for it. So nothing comes to us as private sector. So people sometimes think that when we ask for budget for campaign and for promoting Kenya, they actually think that, wait a minute, this private sector guys are asking for too much. They want the government to fund them to go and promote themselves. That's not the case. We are talking about the destination, branding the destination, and pushing the destination. Now, I agree with George. George clearly says, and also Collins, that our priorities are not well set.
Yes.
When you look at government expenditure, there are many other places that we can easily cut, especially when it comes to expenses that I personally and many of us consider extravagant. You know, we used to talk about expenses government when it comes to motor vehicle, it comes to hospitality, it comes to many things. And the other bit also where we lose a lot of money, and we see it every day in the papers. Just 2 days ago, Ksh.4, because of negligence of the board and the negligence by the management, we are now supposed to pay some Spanish company 4.4 billion shillings. I mean, those are the kind of negligence that in any serious country, heads will roll, people will be surcharged, and the guys will be in big trouble. As we speak, it's business as usual. And just not only Ksh.4, it applies to many other organizations in Kenya where people have not done what they're supposed to do, and we are being fined left, right, center, which means taxpayer, KRA are so busy. By the way, I have a tremendous respect for KRA, the work they do. They go out there, push, convince, and try and collect money. But when it comes to the spending, it is like there's no tomorrow. All the hard work, and we've been told many times that 30% of what is collected is actually lost. We've also been told by none other than His Excellency the President, we are losing close to 2 billion shillings a day. Now, if you are cutting out our budget for KTB from 12 point whatever to 9 whatever, it simply means ask the guys who are taking this money to pose for 3 days and tourism is spared. It's as simple as that. So it all boils down to our priorities. We bring in the foreign currency into this country. Some people say tourism doesn't benefit this country. But today, because there's no tourism, there are no numbers coming in, you can see what's happening to our dollar, to our Kenya shilling against the dollar, against all the hard currencies. Basically, our Kenya shilling is in high dependency unit if it is not ICU. Today, if tourism, we could bring 1 million, 2 million people, straight away, the shilling will start recovering. That's how important our tourism is. Because remember, we import virtually everything, including oil, as much as we were told now we are oil producing country. So we import everything. You need that dollar to import. And if you don't have the dollar coming in, then it basically means you're collecting whatever you have to buy those dollars so that you can import whatever you need to import. So tourism is too important for somebody to consider it as one of those other industries. Yet, when you look at the contribution, we are either number 2, number 3, at most number 4. Even now in bad times, we are still number 4. But when it comes to allocation, we are taken now to the bottom, which I have never understood.
All right, Mr. Harsey, in just 1 minute therefore, you've given us what would be even your prediction for developed countries, even when it comes to what their chances for recovery would be. You put it even Q3 and then Q4 of 2022. What would be your prediction for the country's tourism sector in terms of its proper recovery?
A very quick one. I'm very optimistic because a key market for us, the US, North America, specifically, let's talk about the US.
Yes.
The US have now vaccinated 50 million people. And they are planning to vaccinate 300 million people across the US.
Yes.
And that's a big market for us. Keep in mind that America is always number 1 or number 2 of the international arrivals in Kenya.
Yes.
Their yield, when we talk about yield, is the average spend per visitor is the highest. They beat hands down the Germans, they beat hands down the British, they beat hands down everybody else. So we are hopeful that come June, July, August, which is peak period for the safari business, we are going to come back. But now, what we need to do, and we must do like yesterday, is anybody who has been vaccinated, we need to be one of the few countries in the world that has come out to say, you know what, if you've gotten the vaccine, full dose, the 1 or 2, whatever that now you have it, you come to Kenya, and you know what? You don't have to do a PCR test and what have you. And then we also give long stays that, the option to stay on. So it's very important. And we have a window that we can do wonders June, July, August, and we need to prepare now in February. It is not too early to prepare. It is actually the right time. So we need to come out in a deliberate way. And you know what? We require money to do that, to tell the world. But on the other hand, in our own ways, small ways, we have agents that we are working with all across the world. We are telling them what has happened. But we have a policy side, which is government. If you've been vaccinated, can we exempt them from the PCR? Because if somebody has taken the vaccine, we don't expect them to start doing the PCR and all. Let us be the first country rather than waiting for everybody else to jump in. Is when we are coming in now, you know what? When it is too late, is when you're saying, yeah, also we are doing it. Let us be one of the first few. Georgia, one of the countries is actually doing it. Dubai are going to embrace it. So let us be one of the first countries to have done that. Asante sana.
Pretty much. Mohamed Harisi, Chairman of Kenya Tourism Federation, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We take a short break, and once we come back, Collins and George take us through the rest of our review this morning. Top of that, Kenya is being given the 262.56 billion from IMF, and also let's talk about that dollar. Where are we now in terms of that account once we come shortly on this break?